Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to another edition of the MrWarrenHayes Show, but a special edition. It's not the usual Thursday night antics. No sirree, Bob. Today on the MrWarrenHayes Show, we have a day one preview show. It's the big launching of the new year for WWE. It's happening on the 1st of January. See what they did there. And we are going to be breaking down the card. We're going to be looking in depth at every single match, giving you pinpoint predictions. And when I say we, I'm not just sitting here doing like this third person promo bullshit. No, sir. I say we because today I am joined by fellow podcaster, the host of Smackin It Raw over on YouPorn, for instance. Our boy, I'm really glad to have him, Matt Ritter. Matt, how are you today?
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful day to be neighbors, and I'm glad to be here, Warren. I'm going to be honest with you. I am really excited. And I didn't want to tell you how excited I was to come on. It was really cool that you invited me. I didn't want you to be like, oh, this guy's weird, never mind, and cancel on me. But now that I'm here, it's too late. No, I'm really happy to be here, so I do appreciate it.
Well, I'm happy to have you. I told you this before we got online, right before we started recording here. You invited me on your show earlier this year, and it was a blast. No disrespect to any of my other appearances, friends who've had me on their podcast, whatever. It was absolutely the most fun I had on a podcast the entire year. It was natural. It was more than natural for me to return the favor because it's my small way of saying thank you because I had an absolute blast. It really was a lot of fun.
It really was, and I can't wait to have you back on. Thank you to Kristen Ashley for allowing me to put you on Pornhub. So I appreciate that.
Which is still a topic of discussion. But that's it. So, just to set the stage and make sure everyone knows what we're talking about. So, a dude with a podcast, how novel. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your podcast and what you do over there on Smackin It Raw?
So we've been doing the Smackin It Raw podcast for about 4 years now. And within right around the pandemic era, especially after Raw kind of got stale, we weren't even watching Raw. We were going back and watching old episodes of WCW or Raw or something because the early pandemic was rough. Mm-hmm. I come up with a lot of ideas, a lot of random ideas. I've tried pitching to my producer, Travis, who was my co-host at the time for a while. And one of them was, why don't we put the show on Pornhub? I know I've seen people playing video games and posting, stuff like that on there. And he's like, yeah, why not? Because nobody else was putting their podcast up on Pornhub. Now we're also available on YouTube and Spotify and everywhere else. And you can find those link trees at Matt Ritter on Twitter, but nobody was doing it. And if we can market ourselves as the #1 wrestling podcast on Pornhub, because we're the only wrestling podcast on Pornhub, and then if someone joins along, we're still the first. So why not?
And to be fair, right? You're not doing this in the nude. Not, there's nothing, there's no explicit content. It just so happens that your platform of distribution is, also distributes adult forms of entertainment.
That is correct. Everyone is fully clothed. I may or may not be wearing pants, but you're not going to find out.
Same here, buddy.
You never see below the waist. So
exactly. That's one of the great things that the pandemic has given us. With all these Zoom meetings and whatnot, you're never quite sure, and it can be sometimes enticing, sometimes disturbing to imagine that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, but that's great, and that and as you said, if you can be the #1 wrestling podcast on YouPorn, please do go right ahead, right?
And we've also fully embraced that. So instead of talking about what we like or what we dislike or giving 5-star ratings and what you see, we talk about what we're spitting or swallowing, because what else would you do on Pornhub? So that's how we go.
I have a couple of ideas of what else I could be doing on Pornhub, but but I do But I get the sentiment. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, hey, you guys should definitely check it out. And if you know, and if you know, you don't want to have to clear your browsing history just in case your significant other wonders what you're doing on Pornhub, like Matt said, podcast platforms, Spotify, so on and so forth. It's also available there. So it's fantastic, and I thank you very much, Matt, for being here. I really appreciate it. And and if you guys are watching this right now on YouTube, perhaps you're watching this as a premiere. This is not a live show as I usually do. We're recording. This is pre-recorded, but maybe you're watching this as a premiere right now or later on demand. Consider giving the video a like, a big thumbs up. YouTube really likes that kind of stuff, so I really do appreciate it. And if it's your first time popping around, hey, consider subscribing too, or let us work for the subscription, and then say, hey, this is worth it or not. That's always how I prefer.
Also, any reviews featuring phone wallets, Eva Marie, or contract signings specifically, I know you enjoy. So
yes, those are very, very good. Absolutely. Yes. If you want to leave some reviews over on Apple Podcasts, 5-star reviews with, you can talk about, yes, phone wallets, Eva Marie. Yeah, absolutely. Those are my topics of choice. No, but please do have a little fun with it. You can also leave reviews on Spotify. And by the way, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this on Spotify, you can also watch it now as the video is now available. Yeah, you can post video on Spotify now, or at least it's been unlocked for me. I don't know.
I'll have to talk to Travis about that. That's
yeah. You can actually post your video now on Spotify too, so you can flip between video and audio, which is pretty dope. There you go. Day 1, WWE. Well, okay, look, before we get into the pay-per-view, just to show that we're hip with the times, as we're recording this, we learned yesterday, because we're recording this on the Thursday, and we learned on Wednesday of the departure of one Toni Storm from WWE. All reports seem to indicate that she quit as opposed to being released. There's some discussion as we're speaking right now as to whether she requested her release, or she was like, not see ya, and just walked out the door. Regardless as to how it happened, Toni Storm no longer with the company, coming off of a small program with Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's title. Former NXT UK champion, Mae Young Classic tournament winner as well. Matt, what do you think about Toni Storm leaving the company?
I'm bummed. I'm bummed for a lot of reasons. Toni Storm is a great example of what I feel like WWE has failed to do in a lot of cases. They had her doing great things in NXT UK, the Mae Young Classic, all those things. They bring her to NXT, and instead of showcasing and utilizing her properly there, they kind of hot-shotted her straight to the main roster.
Yep.
Stripped away all of the things that we loved about her to mold her into the image that we must assume Vince or Bruce or whoever had for her, which was not the person that we fell in love with. And then when it didn't work, it's either, okay, this isn't working for me, I want to go, or this isn't working for us, we're going to let you go. Whatever the case may be. And it's really sad because Toni is talented as all hell, like she's amazing. Mm-hmm. I remember watching Evolution, watching her, in the Mae Young Classic and all that, and I was captivated and excited. She was one of the main reasons I started watching NXT UK when it first came out, because she was over there and Rhea was over there, and there was all this great stuff. And then she came to NXT, and I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be awesome. Like, Toni's going to fit in perfectly here. She's got Io, she's got all these people, and we didn't really get to see a lot of what we wanted to see with her. Then she comes up, and it's like, okay, she's here. We don't see her for a months. Then she's in a feud with Charlotte, and she's losing and taking cream pies to the face and all sorts of shit. And now she's gone. And we got really nothing that we wanted to see from her. Right. None of the matches, none of it. And I'm absolutely going to miss Jizzy's Toni Storm thick tweets, where she compares Toni Storm's thickness to different thick things in the world, like peanut butter and so on and so forth. So I'm gonna miss that from my Twitter feed.
Oh, shout out to Jizzy though. But were you familiar with her work before she hit WWE? Had you ever seen her stuff in Stardom? Or
very few wrestlers have I caught stuff that they've done prior to WWE. So my introduction to a lot of people is when they get into NXT or now AEW, so on and so forth. So
no, and that's fair. Like, I'm not trying to get all hipster on you, because my point here was that when she was tearing up the scene over in Britain, in Brit Res, and she had a great run in Stardom as well, where she fought Io Shirai a couple of times, and had great matches with her there. So I remember you're watching this girl go and on the independents, and you look at her and you're like, she's made for WWE. Like, she has the look. She has the presentation. She has this natural connection with the audience. Like, she is made to be in the women's division for WWE. She can absolutely wreck it. And it's another sure thing that WWE were like, we're not, like Keith Lee, right? It's like, how you have these things that any other promoter in the world starting up their promotion would be like, these are the people I center everything around and I build upon. You have them in your hands and you're like, couldn't quite figure out what to do with it. God damn, that pie throwing angle didn't put her over. Shit, we got nothing for her. It's like, I don't understand it.
No, it's ridiculous. And like you said, it's the same thing with Keith Lee. Your shirt, Mr. Aleister Black. I mean, I was not a striked-based wrestling fan. I did not like finishers like the running knee, things like that, until the Black Mass came into my life. And I'm like, you know what? I mean, obviously the feature music was an exception. There's an exception to every rule, but I liked moves, or what I consider moves, slams, the pedigree, stunner, things like that. Submissions. Black Mass came into my life and I'm like, all right, you know what? Maybe I was wrong about this whole, striker stuff. So.
And I mean, look, the guy's got a background in Muay Thai and kickboxing, and, so he uses that to his advantage. Like, one does not just call themselves a striker and then suddenly you're like, oh, what a great striking person. No, it's, if you're going to fall in love, might as well fall in love with the best. Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, look, just wanted to get a few thoughts there on Toni Storm, but let's get into the nitty gritty. Day one, as I like to do on these prediction shows, I like to sort of go back a couple of months, in between pay-per-views. The last pay-per-view we had was the Saudi show, which I generally don't talk about here on the MrWarrenHayes show, but in the interim, in the build-up to day one, in a general rule, without getting into specifics, because obviously we're going to be talking about the matches, how do you feel about the build to day one so far, Matt?
Some matches I'm really excited for. Some builds have been absolutely fantastic. Some builds, not so much. There are definitely matches on this card, one of which is completely my own unadulterated dislike for Matt Riddle, and it's completely petty and biased, and it's my own, and I understand. That makes me not excited for things. But other than that, I mean, they've done some good storytelling. Not everything has been great, though, and not everything's been what I expected, which we'll talk about when we get with like Edge and Miz.
Sure.
So
okay, well, then let's dive right in. Let's get right to it then. Let's start talking about day one, and I'm going to be running down the card as it's presented to us on WWE.com, your number one source for all things WWE. And I'm going to be reading them off in reverse order as they're presented. So we're going to start by talking about the Raw Tag Team Championship match. RK Bro, Randy Orton, and your favorite wrestler versus the Street Profits. I mean, okay, I don't know. Why don't you kick it off? Tell me about this one.
All right. So I am one of like 5 people in the world that cannot stand Matt Riddle.
Let's make it 6.
6. I understand why he is appealing to some people. The character, the gimmick doesn't do it for me. And then again, I have my own personal petty reasons. Someone tagged me on Twitter and threatened to castrate me thinking I was Matt Riddle, because our names are so similar. and then blocked me when I tried to explain to them that I was not Matt Riddle. So that was the whole thing.
Was it a block of shame where they realized they didn't get the person like, oh shit, block, I don't want to.
I'd hope so. Or they just thought I was lying, one of the two. The Arcade Bro tournament, Riddle doing the whole, doing the jacket, the blazer, and all that. The only part of that outside of the Street Profits winning, because I enjoy so much what Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford do, was Otis beating up Matt Riddle. The rest of it just, we don't like, WWE doesn't really care about tag team wrestling. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't put a lot into, unless it's like the New Day versus the Usos, or now RK Bro, which was a thrown together tag team. They don't really care about tag team wrestling. They don't highlight it. There aren't a lot of, we have 0 tag teams in the women's division except for 2. Like, you have the champs and their contenders, and that's it. Neither here nor there. But even here, like, they did the tournament. There was no drama in the tournament. There was no, I believe we had babyface teams win, and then there was something weird where the people that you expected to win to move on to the tournament weren't the people that won to move on. Yeah, because we had the Mysterios versus the Street Profits. Yeah,
exactly.
So, and then they're going on to face a babyface team. So, like, there's no heat there, especially if you're a Street Profits fan and an RK Bro fan. Like, you're not rooting for one or the other. Like,
you're splitting the crowd, because I'm sure there are people who like both of those teams. I'm a big Angelo Dawkins guy. I remember when they were in NXT, I remember Dawkins being very iffy. You're like, yeah, good, like, you could tell solid base, but you're like, okay, the cake still needs to bake a little bit. It's like not quite there yet, but I think he's super solid now. Like, if anything, I know people like to, and with reason, they like to freak out about Montez Ford. Like I said, with very good reason. Guy is crazy charismatic. He does fantastic high flying moves. He's completely fearless. But Dawkins is exactly what that tag team needs. A solid, grounded, strong power base. That's what I was looking for. Power base guy, but he is very, very good. It's rare that I don't enjoy watching the Street Profits as opposed to the Street Profits antics, which can get annoying. And I think this is like you said it for Riddle, and I'm no fan of Matt Riddle either. I'm absolutely with you for a bunch of reasons as well. And they're all personal, and what are you going to do? I think this is the purveying problem that I had with this entire thing, is like all the antics, that surround this match just really got bothersome and annoying. Like you said, Matt Riddle, having Vince McMahon's old broadcasting jacket, it's like I don't, it's all too much for what it's too sports entertaining for me. I can get that some people really like it. I don't know. And it's to a point where I wonder, will Matt Riddle be able to survive the breakup of RK Bro, which is going to be inevitable at some point, right? Is Matt Riddle going to be able to be sustainable on his own? Because right now, what makes him appealing is the fact that he's playing off the straightest of straight men in look, it's basic comedy. It's basic comedy duos, right? You have one guy who's the goofy guy who's bouncing off of the straight guy. It's Laurel and Hardy, except they're pro wrestlers essentially. Do you just want to see Hardy? I don't know. I can't remember which one. The skinny guy, who was the goof. Do you want to see the skinny guy do shit on his own without the fat guy to bounce stuff off of? You know what I mean?
Abbott and Costello, same.
Abbott and
same
Costello,
analogy.
Absolutely.
I think Riddle will be fine, unfortunately, which makes me sad. Like, I don't want to see anyone lose their job, but if Matt Riddle wasn't forced down my throat on NXT 2.0 with MSK, and that's why I think he'll be fine, is they will find somewhere to put him in, because Vince clearly finds him entertaining, and there are plenty of other people We've seen him with AJ. We've, Omos, like, they will find someone to put him with, pair him with, whether it's in a feud or otherwise, to annoy, to do the things that he does that I just cannot stand. Talk about Burger King and kick his flip-flops at and all the other dumb stuff he does.
Birds.
They'll
You
find
the birds. You forgot the birds.
Yeah, the birds. They'll find something for him, unfortunately. I am personally hoping that turn that you're talking about happens this Sunday.
Oh, really?
Day one.
You'd be ready to pull the plug on it.
I've been ready to pull the plug on it since it started, but that's neither here nor there, Warren. I went into much greater and more graphic detail on my podcast, and I'm going to spare your listeners the
and maybe some demonetization.
Yeah, the explicit nature into which I went to say what I wanted to see, but I'm ready to pull the plug. I mean, we're getting towards WrestleMania season. Royal Rumble's right around the corner.
Sure.
So if you're going to pull the plug and you're going to make this match for WrestleMania, now's the time. If it's not here, then it's at the Royal Rumble. But you got to break them up as a tag team first. So I do it now.
I can get behind that. All right. Makes sense. Who do you think wins?
I will never, ever, 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 ever pick Matt Riddle to win. So it's going to be the Street Profits.
Well, you kind of sold me on the idea of this being a good time to start the RKO breakup. We are, we're taking the we're taking the on ramp to the road to WrestleMania right now. How do you like that for an analogy? Hire me. So I guess it would kind of set some seeds of dissent. At the very least, if they lose the titles, and Randy is maybe just done, it could be, you never know when Randy's going to snap, right?
Randy's clearly been annoyed with Matt Riddle. Like, we saw it in the RK Bro tournament where he said, you do this, I'm done, I'm not doing this. And Riddle keeps forcing himself on Randy without Randy's consent. And Randy's like, back off, I don't want any more. And he's like, no, love me, love me, love me.
Sure.
And I feel like the only thing that's keeping Randy there is those tag team titles. So if the Street Profits do win, Randy can finally exercise the demon inside himself. And I mean, we even saw a little tease of it on Raw when they hugged and it looked like Randy was going to go for the RKO. And he's like, I gotcha.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm good with that. No, okay. Let's go with Street Profits. I think we'll be in agreement for this one. Now, next match we're going to talk about is the greatest pay-per-view match I've ever had the pleasure to review. For real, though. Like, a match that you've set up that's something that just screams, give me your money, all right? Drew McIntyre versus Madcap Moss. Okay, now seriously, Matt, honest to God, is Madcap Moss the absolute worst shit on wrestling television, all brands confounded right now? Is it absolutely the worst possible thing you could be seeing on a weekly basis? And why is the answer yes?
Absolutely the worst. Listen, they have tried so many things with Riddick Moss.
I don't understand. I'm so glad you say it. I don't understand. Look at the people who lost their jobs this year, Matt. Look at the people who were fired and they still have fucking Riddick Moss. They still hang on to this guy and they're like, kid, we're going to make you a star. It boggles my mind.
I do not, for the life of me. Like, I look at Riddick Moss and I see what Vince would see in him as a potential wrestler. But outside of the way he looks, there is nothing there. There was nothing there when he teamed with Tino Sabatelli down in NXT. I didn't care about them then. And that's when I really cared about everybody but them in NXT. Like,
sure.
Everybody.
Sure.
I don't care about him at all. I hate Happy Corbin. I don't get it. And like you said, again, Keith Lee, you couldn't figure out how to properly use Keith Lee, who had the huge pop at Survivor Series, the big moment at the Royal Rumble, all of these things. But I have to suffer through Madcap Moss on my TV every week, and now Drew, you're giving him Drew? Like,
I don't
why are you
like.
doing that to Drew?
I do not like. Here's the only explanation I have. The only explanation that I could is that Vince sees him as a guy that he could make. Because Vince is like that, right? My creations, look, there's history behind us to prove that Vince doesn't like, bringing in people that he didn't make and pushing them and making them into, he doesn't like it. There's history that to back that claim up. So all I can see is him looking at Riddick and being like, pal, I can make you a star. I'll turn you into something. But he's terrible, just like you said. Look, I am convinced this gimmick, you said you hate Happy Corbin. Madcap Moss makes me like Happy Corbin. That's how bad this shit is. And you could probably give the Madcap gimmick to someone else. And someone else could make this work. Riddick Moss he's got no real charisma and zero comedic timing to pull this shit off. Zero. Oh, but Warren, he's supposed to be not funny. Yeah, no. He's supposed to try to make me think it's funny. Like, give me something to make me cringe at the jokes. Now, I'm just cringing at the gimmick, right? Yep. That's the main difference. You're supposed to hate him. He's a heel. Oh, fuck off.
Listen, we have not put out a podcast. Our last one that we did was prior to Christmas. We took this time as a break. I have been watching Raw on demand.
Okay.
For the specific purpose of the fact that I can now, Raw and SmackDown, I can now fast forward through the Riddle segments on Raw and the Madcap Moss and Happy Corbin. I do not watch them. I literally skip them now because I don't have to cover them for the weekly show. Right. And I'm not going to put myself through it. That's how bad it is. And I don't skip anything. Like, I'll watch just about anything, just even if I can just make fun of it or go say some stuff on Twitter. What it sounds to me like you're saying is the on-air story that we're getting with Vince McMahon and Austin Theory, where he's, Vince is rubbing his thigh under the table. That's what's actually happening with Madcap Moss behind the scenes with Vince, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's what I think. That I'd even go as far as to say that the Austin Theory Vince McMahon thing is actually, like, I think there's something very meta about it, where it's like, here are all these like, Austin Theory is every WWE superstar who wants to make it and listens to Vince's and listens to Vince's indications and directions, and they don't know what to do. They're like, because now the week after, Vince is like, oh no, we're doing something else, pal, and they're trying to do their best to understand what's going on. Like, I'm convinced there's something a lot more meta to it.
WWE's been doing a lot of very meta things, and while I do, like, a degree of me, I enjoy it. Another degree, it kind of feels like a slap in the face, like how they're now addressing repeatedly the can they coexist thing, and it's part of promos and everything. It's like, all right, if you know you're doing this and it's stupid and we're telling you it's stupid, yeah, okay, so you're kind of making fun of it, but you're still doing it. So now you're making fun of me. It's like, oh, you don't like it? Well, here, we're going to make fun of it, but also we're going to keep doing it, so shut up and take it.
Yeah, there'd be a difference if because it's a legitimate gripe, it's a legitimate annoyance, the thing, with the coexist. The fact that they're hammering it home and they're like, can they coexist? It's like, come on, man. We legitimately don't like it. We expect you to do better. It's not cute. Like, it's not funny. We're annoyed by it, Yep. Whereas I appreciate them leaning into the Veer stuff when they did the send Veer tweet. Mm-hmm. If only because WWE broke out of its bubble for once in its fucking life. Be like, oh, we know what's going on elsewhere. Just wink, wink. We're going to have a little fun with it. And that, at least, I'm like, have some fun with that. I think that's all right.
Well, if they don't hype up Veer the way they hyped up Hook when he hit every single move live, I'm going to be very disappointed. When Veer gets in the ring, I want huge pops. When Veer hits a punch, I want huge pops. I need them to overhype him the way they overhyped Hook.
They should bring in, you know what they should do? They should bring in Mike Tenay just to sit down for that match and have Tenay, be put on his professor hat, Professor Mike Tenay, right? And just call every move like exactly like you said, like Taz did with Hook. That'd be fantastic, but they won't because it'd be fun, It
really would.
So Drew or Madcap, who wins?
It's got to be Drew. If they let Madcap Moss beat Drew McIntyre, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. Edge will be taking on The Miz, which has been going on for a couple of weeks now. Okay, when we were talking about the build here, you said I think you mentioned Edge and Miz being one of these builds that you were not expecting, right? Tell me how.
I was expecting a mixed tag match.
Okay.
And we may still be getting that. That may be something in the future, but with Beth leaving commentary for NXT, Maurice being prominent in this feud, I had been expecting at some point prior to this, Beth to show up and us to get a mixed tag match. And they may be saving that. But that's where I thought we were going. I did not think we were going to start with a one-on-one match. I thought we'd go mixed tag first and then maybe singles match afterwards. So that's really the only thing, is the lack of Beth Phoenix in the story, with Maurice being so prominent, is the only thing I didn't really expect. So
maybe Beth is too busy promoting her new album.
Could be.
Well, look, anyone who knows me and, watches even or listens remotely to my podcast know that I'm not a big fan of extended promos, long promos, and especially long promo feuds. I know a lot of people got really, really excited at the idea of MJF and CM Punk on the other side having a feud with each other, and I agree, but my reservation was like, they're probably just going to talk to each other for weeks, and that's exactly what we're getting. Although we did get some respite last week when they had the 6-man tag, with where they actually where MJF was sort of running away from CM Punk, so on and so forth. But I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of long extended promos. I like my stories when they happen in the ring. I think it's a lot more. I think when you're able to tell stories in the ring, it tells a story 10 times better than standing around talking to each other. So this is my main problem with the Edge and Miz feud, where at some point it became a battle of interview shows. Where I'm like,
yes.
What am I? What's going on? And neither of them are wrestling. Neither of them are going into the ring and squashing dudes. Like, I'm old enough to remember a time when pay-per-views would happen, you'd have the people involved. On the weekly shows, they'd get into the ring, they'd squash an under guy, they'd squash a jabron, and build to the match, where you're like, oh yeah, I'm excited to see this person wrestle because look at what he's doing here. And now they don't even wrestle anymore. They just stand around and talk, and it just all bothers me. Matt, it just bothers me.
Well, I think if they hadn't fired John Morrison, we may have seen Edge wrestle John Morrison, because that's kind of what WWE likes to do, is they'll keep Miz out, he'll interfere, he'll be outside. John Morrison will be wrestling Edge, so Edge gets some TV time and so on and so forth. But now that Miz has no friends for him to wrestle, they're like, well, what are we supposed to do? We don't want to put them in the ring together before the match. Well, just have them talk for weeks on end. And I enjoyed the 2 weeks that we got of CM Punk MJF. That doesn't bother me. But with this feud to this point, I agree. It's been too much talking, not enough action. At least with Seth Rollins, like Seth went to his home and invaded his home and did some more stuff.
He let's be fair. He went in and threw some fruit around. Then sat in a chair.
Yeah, and made fun of his daughter's drawings.
Oh, okay, that's the wildest home invasion I've ever seen.
Yeah, not like we're talking about Brian Pillman and Austin
no,
or anything.
No.
Which that was very watered down, but at least it was something different than them cutting promos on each other in the ring every week. Fair. So this definitely, thank God we're finally to the match, because I don't think I could do another week of them talking to each other about the same stuff. And Edge, you're washed up, and Miz, you're great, you're all these things, but you never lived up to your potential, and you're not me. And
it's always the same thing. It's like when I my buddy Alex Pulowski over at Fightful, when we were doing reviews together, he'd always explain WWE, and I've adopted it since. Explaining WWE storytelling as, basically storytelling, right? You're supposed to go from point A to point B to point C to point D, so on and so forth. But WWE will give you the impression that you're going from point A to point B to point C because the story's going forward just because time moves forward, but you're always on point B. You're never, it's point B, and then sometimes you might even regress back to point A to go back to point B, and then be like, oh, storyline progression, but no, we're still in the same place. And that's all it's been week after week. It's them saying, you're washed up, you used to be a rookie who got kicked out of the locker room. It's like, fine, but which is why they need matches, Matt. That's why they just, on the fucking Monday Night Raw, put Edge in a match with a guy from the PC, have Edge destroy the guy from the PC. It's not going to add anything to his bump card. You're not asking him to take fucking air raid crashes on the apron. It's just like, have him squash a dude. Have Miz squash a dude. Because we're all under the impression that Miz is a coward. He's not going to wrestle. He's going to chicken. He's a bad wrestler. I don't understand.
I mean, you could, with Edge, you could even do something where it's wrong place, wrong time. Like, you could have him bump into Ali backstage, all mad at what the Miz said. Ali says the wrong thing. He takes him out there. He runs through him, hits a spear, done. And we get something from Edge.
And you know what? Big pop from the audience, because you get to see Edge do a spear. Because you have a live crowd to please too, right?
Yep.
You got that anyway. I'm not I don't even know how good this match could be. Like, Miz is such a wild card, sometimes he turns up, and sometimes it's a little more askew. Like, I don't even know what to expect with this match. What do you think? Who do you think is going to win here?
I'm going to give the edge to Miz because
I see what you did there.
Because I feel like this feud is going to continue, and we are going to get that eventual mixed tag match featuring Beth. So I feel like Maurice will be involved, will cost Edge, which will lead us to another match down the road. So I'm going to give this one to the Miz. I actually think it's going to be a good match. I mean, we saw what they did with Bad Bunny at WrestleMania in that tag team match, where, I mean, Miz, when he wants to, he can go. And I feel like he's fairly motivated in this match with Edge to where he's going to put on something that we're going to really enjoy. So
that's fair.
It all depends on his motivation.
Yeah, I agree.
Wrestling.
Yeah, I have the distinct impression that they're going to want this feud to continue. I completely expect Beth Phoenix to show up and mess around with Maurice, who tries to interfere in the match. Like, I'm completely expecting that. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Yeah, I'll go with Miz too.
Okay.
It's kind of boring. We're on the same page here for all of them.
I'll find something to argue with you about. Don't worry.
Okay, I'm excited. I don't think we're gonna necessarily. Well, maybe here. We'll see. SmackDown Tag Team Championship is going to be on the line. The Usos, the champs, versus the New Day. Xavier Woods, the King, and Kofi Kingston. By my calculations, Matt, I believe this is the 647th match that these two teams have together. I could be off by maybe one or two. I mean, this is my problem. These are two talented tag teams, four guys that I really like. I've just seen this match so many times at this point, I can't even be bothered.
Yeah, I agree. It's gonna be a good match. They're gonna have a good match. They always have a good match. But as you said, after 646 matches, how much new can you bring to the table? I mean,
No.
yeah, you can throw a crown and a robe on Xavier and call him King Xavier, King Woods. You can do these things. You can, cut one of the Usos' hair so you can tell them apart and which one's which. But
it's mostly for the social media guy, so that the social media guy can figure it out.
But really, when it comes to the in-ring work, we've seen this play out in every variation possible through every gimmick that they've had. It's going to be good, but it's going to be the same good that we've always gotten. And the nice thing is it's been a little while, so at least there's not like a very, very, very recent, really good tag team match we're going to be like compare it to.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they don't care about tag teams unless it's these two, which is why these two are featured prominently here. Or RK Bro over on Raw. Like, there isn't really a tag team division, especially on SmackDown. Like, who else would it be on SmackDown if it wasn't the New Day? Like, I can't think of another tag team off the top of my head on SmackDown.
I can't either.
Sadly, Madcap Moss and Corbin, Shinsuke and Boogs.
Yeah, that's it.
Your Intercontinental Tag Team Wrestler, Intercontinental Tag Champion Tag Wrestler. Like, who do we have on SmackDown? Like, there's nobody, and that is very, very sad. Like,
yeah, no, the only place, the tag team wrestling in WWE is a device for creative to put singles wrestlers who they don't have anything to do with together to give them something to do. Even in New Japan, it's the same thing. New Japan doesn't care about its tag team wrestling either. It's just a complete mess. I don't know.
And see, this is why I loved NXT Black and Gold so much, and why, to a degree, I still do love NXT 2.0, because NXT 2.0, you still do have Imperium and GYV and Match Shitty Kids, MSK. You have actual tag teams that they actually do things with, and they utilize. You used to get that in NXT, whereas now AEW has so many tag teams that on a nightly basis, we have 2 trios matches and a 10-man tag, because there's so many tag teams. We got to fit them all in one match. And WWE has so few that you're seeing the same thing. So it's either you're super, super oversaturated on one end, or you're just lacking so bad on the other. And NXT was that perfect mix in the tag team division.
But the tag teams that you pointed out there, and for NXT, is you're 100% correct. Imperium are fantastic. Grizzled Young Veterans are equally fantastic. I'm a huge fan. MSK are great as well. We've seen them have those flashes of greatness anyway.
See, as long as they're associated with Riddle, they're on my shit list. So
they're sorry. Matt's Shitty Kids.
That's what MSK stands for.
Yeah, I know. I can get behind that. So do we have, coming back to day one, do we have a title switch, or do the Usos retain?
I'm going to go with the title switch. I kind of feel like this is going to be the beginning of the descent of the bloodline. They have been running roughshod across SmackDown and even on Raw to my distaste, because apparently when the tribal chief is the tribal chief, he can go on whatever show he wants and
bring whoever he wants with him. Yeah, sure. Yep.
They can do whatever they want. Which, if you listen to my show, is my biggest pet peeve, is the ignorance of the brand split. But I feel like it's time. I feel like it's almost gone too long. It's run its course, and now it's time for there to be some peril in the bloodline.
Sure.
And with Xavier winning King of the Ring and being on the hot streak that he's been on, Kofi now being back, if they lose, what do you do with them going forward?
No, I completely agree. I completely agree. I'm going to go with the Usos losing as well. I think, if anything, it's going to be Paul Heyman saying, y'all shouldn't have fired me. Mm-hmm. Basically. And I think that could be it could be fun for, like, I kind of miss like super snarky Paul, you know? I like Paul Heyman when he's I really like Paul Heyman when he's really when he has this air of superiority, when he knows he's right, you know, and he's like, I told you so kind of thing, you know, like it's a spoiler. This is a spoiler, not a prediction. Paul Heyman, you know, I think it'd be a good opportunity for that. Anyway, but like you said, I mean, it's going to be a good match because the guys who are in this ring are too talented, but Jesus Christ. We've seen it before, and we'll see it again. That's the thing. We're not done.
Oh, yeah, no, guaranteed. They might just, that might be they'll induct all 4 of them into the Hall of Fame with a match. That's
pretty much. The Raw Women's Championship, the only women's match on the card, by the way. Becky Lynch will be defending her title against Liv Morgan. I have thoughts, but you're the guest. I'd like to hear yours first.
If you're not going to put the belt on Liv, why the fuck are we wasting all this time? Why are we doing this? I understand that Liv, in-ring wise, is not on, you know, the level of a Sasha, a Charlotte, a Bianca, and Asuka. I completely get that. But she does have an intangible that make the fans like her and enjoy her. And my wife's over here working, and she just said she's hot as fuck. So there's that too. But no, there's an intangible here about Liv where you want to see her win. And WWE has started and stopped with her so many times. You had those awful promos of her in the bathtub and all of these things that they did with her. And now there's finally some momentum behind her. You know, everything with the Riot Squad. They never gave the Riot Squad the tag team titles or let them really do anything. So if we're going to do all this and we're going to watch Becky cheat her to almost win and all of this stuff, what is the point of her losing to Becky again? Why do it? And don't get me wrong, I love Becky Lynch. I absolutely do. Big Time Backs has not been my favorite version of Becky Lynch. I have not enjoyed it to the extent that I've enjoyed the other the Man and, you know, Becky 2 Belts and all that.
No, of course. And I know why. Because no one wants a heel Becky Lynch. What the fuck is this? You know, like, it goes right back down to that. It's like, no one wanted Becky Lynch to turn heel, and I don't care what WWE says, and I don't care what Becky says in interviews where she says, yeah, you know, we just wanted to mix it up and give it no one wanted, and this and I'm going to go back to my SummerSlam thoughts when I was talking about this. Look, right now, there's a wrestling company on national television, on cable, on a weekly basis, that has a tendency to give the audience what they want, right? Where you're like, you have a hometown hero. Hometown hero is going to win in his hometown, and he's going to win a big belt, and people are going to pop, and people are going to feel good. You know, Becky Lynch comes back as a surprise at SummerSlam to turn heel and squash a beloved, an equally beloved champion. That makes no sense. Everyone wanted Becky to return. Everyone was excited. She had started posting pictures of her training on Instagram, like, you know, and everyone was excited for her to come back, but not to this. And this is just forcing something that the audience didn't really want. And we're back to square one, kind of with Vince saying, no, you guys are going to cheer for Roman Reigns. You know, it's like, no, you guys are going to boo for Becky Lynch, but we don't want to. And the thing is that no one has, even when they were telling us, even when WWE was telling us, Becky Lynch is not worth your time. Look, she's losing here. She's losing here. She's not, even though WWE was telling us she's not a top star, we still cheered for her. She still got huge reactions. People still sang along to her theme song. Fuck, people are still singing along to her theme song today. No one wants a heel Becky Lynch to begin with.
Now, I will say that if they are trying to do the same thing with Liv, and that's the story they're telling, is Becky was that underdog, and now she has won the title, and she has become, everything that she fought against, and now Liv is in that position. They're not doing a great job telling that story. And
No,
I'm
they're
glad
not.
you brought up SummerSlam, because I got to call out Pretty Kyle, apron bump, the hardest part of the ring, real quick. I
He
saw
is
him
very
tweet
pretty,
something
too.
out. He is. That's why I call him Pretty Kyle. He tweeted something out about how he actually thought that the Becky Lynch thing at SummerSlam was great, because he felt that Bianca was becoming stale and robotic, and this, kind of freshened her up, and she needed this at that point. I completely disagree. And
too.
I'm only calling him out because he's not here and he can yell at me in DMs later. But at least he'll enjoy hearing this. I thought Bianca was on a hot streak.
Yeah.
Bianca's fantastic. I was sitting back and I'm looking like, you look at where we were with Charlotte holding the championship in NXT, and you had her facing Rhea, and Bianca was there. And you look at those, and you got Bianca versus Rhea, which for a pandemic era WrestleMania match was great. It really was. But now we see where Rhea is and we see where Bianca is, and it's like, shit, maybe they should have given us that triple threat match.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they should have done more with Bianca in NXT, because look at the star that they had that they weren't really using down there. Thank God she blew up. She's one of the few that they actually didn't utilize and then became something bigger, as opposed to like a Toni Storm, which we talked about earlier.
Sure.
Bianca's fucking fantastic. And it's the same thing with Liv. I can only watch the fans root for Liv and want to see Liv win, and then her take loss after loss so many times before I stop caring. And I'm almost at the point to where I can no longer be invested in Liv Morgan, because WWE does not seem invested in her, and why am I wasting my time?
That's exactly it. But that's exactly it. And you said it even earlier with all the start-stop stuff. There's no fathomable reason to be invested in Liv Morgan. And I've said multiple times on my show, this Liv, and you said it yourself, has the intangibles. She has this charisma. She has a connection with the people that's very, very natural. She comes across as a babyface perfectly naturally, right? She's just a natural babyface. She is not the second coming of fucking Miko Satomura. She's not, okay? But you can go a long way. You can coast quite a bit on charisma, right? You really, again, history is there to prove that it's possible to have a proper career in wrestling just by looking the part and acting the part, right? But the start-stop stuff that they've been doing with her is ridiculous. And the match they had a couple of weeks ago, Matt, it wasn't good. It just was not good. And if I'm a booker and I book this match and it stinks up the joint like it did, I'm like, look, we gotta change trajectory here. We can't book this again. We can't do this again. And it makes even less sense to put Liv in this position where she lost against the champ a couple of weeks ago. You're going to give her a rematch. Oh, but Becky does what she... It doesn't make sense.
No.
Because you don't get invested in this person who lost. Lost the match. Straight up. And again, if WWE had a habit of just giving people matches on a weekly basis, why not have Liv Morgan squash PC jabrones? They have the people to do it. They could be doing that, but they don't. Instead, they have her come out, cut awkward promos, run videos about her when she was a kid. But that's not how you build a star. It just isn't.
And if the issue is possibly some of her in-ring work, some timing, some footwork, so on and so forth, the only way you improve that is putting her on TV, because TV matches matter.
Yep.
The more TV matches you have, the better you are in TV, the more critiques and things you see to work on while you're on TV, so you work better for TV. It's the only way to fix it.
It's the only way to improve.
Keeping people off TV does not make them better when they do get on TV. Give them matches. I agree.
100% in agreement with you. That's the only way to improve, and more than just 3-minute matches too, because wrestlers will tell you don't learn shit in a 3-minute match. You just don't. You absolutely don't improve by doing 3-minute matches week in and week out as well. Anyway, so what happens in this match? I think Becky retains.
I have to go Liv.
Really?
I cannot fathom all of this for nothing. I can't. Like, all of this that we've done with her and the weeks and the promo packages, and like you said, the video of her as a child and all of these things, I can't, like, I understand it's very WWE to do, but like my brain just won't allow me to sit here and be like, they did all this and they're just going to have her lose and shove her back in catering. Like, it's probably going to happen. It's going to drive me nuts, but just logically, it's like, I can't accept the fact that they're going to waste my time like that, even though I know they probably are.
That's very, very interesting. Here's, as we were talking about earlier, we're heading on to the on-ramp to the road to WrestleMania. Is Liv Morgan your champion heading into the Royal Rumble, mind you? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I don't see Liv having a long run. I don't see her making it to WrestleMania, but I can see them, trying it out, giving her a short run. She might lose it by the Royal Rumble. If not, what are we doing in February? Anything? Fastlane?
Yeah, the Fastlane probably, something like that.
Speed bump, whatever they call it. Yeah.
The fast lane to the roadblock, which is WrestleMania. I don't know. I can't remember what they call it.
The speed bump on the way to WrestleMania, like whatever they do. Honestly, like I could see her having a short run there and losing to maybe Becky again.
Huh.
So I definitely don't see her winning the Royal Rumble. Let's hope that that's not a thing, because I don't necessarily want to see her in the main event of WrestleMania, but I cannot fathom them not at least putting the belt on her for a short run, kind of like they did with Nikki. Like they gave Nikki that 1 month run as champion with the Money in the Bank. They tried it out. They saw if it worked. If it didn't work, they took the belt off her. Like, that's where I see it going.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, see, I don't see. I don't see it happening. Have you ever heard me talk about Apollo Crews?
Yes.
Because I think Liv Morgan is the Apollo Crews of the women's division, where you can never really get behind her because the company doesn't get behind her. And the moment that you start going, yeah, whoop, just pull the rug from under them, and it's like no, back into catering or back into and the last Apollo Crews, and they got me. They got me with the last Apollo Crews run with the gimmick change and the U.S. was it Intercontinental title run? They got me because I was like, finally.
And then they gave us Apollo Crews versus Big E for 6 months over and over and over again, and then we stopped caring because they didn't give him someone new. They didn't do anything with it.
And then they have him switch brands, and then it's back to zero. And then this week on commentary, when they had the Apollo Crews AJ Styles match, commentary was back to their typical Apollo Crews stuff, which is, Apollo has so much promise, and he has to prove himself. He always has to prove himself. It's never like, Jesus, this guy's been with the company for years at this point. He's done everything. He's been an IC champion. Like, we shouldn't have this discourse. That's what they're doing with Liv. Liv is the Apollo Crews of the women's division.
So you know how they always ask people who cannot stand WWE, how do you still watch WWE? How do you still watch WWE? My pick for Liv is kind of indicative of that. Is even though I know WWE is going to fuck me over probably, I still have hope.
Sure.
I still have hope that they're going to do kind of what they seem to be promising us.
Because you like the talent.
Yes, I do. And like I said, I'm going to say something very controversial, and I'm not comparing them apples to apples, but The Rock, charisma ass.
Yeah.
The Rock was not the greatest in-ring competitor we ever saw. He was not a Bret Hart. He was not a Shawn Michaels. He oversold, and it was entertaining as all hell, but he oversold his ass off. He didn't have a very extremely diverse moveset, but he had that charisma.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to main event with that.
Mm-hmm.
If you can harness the it factor and the charisma that Liv has, she could Do something similar. I'm not going to call her the Rock of the women's division in any way, shape, or form. Not saying that, but what I'm saying is she has that same appeal. She may not be the greatest wrestler in the ring, but she can fill that role with the amount of charisma and the people and the way she is able to swell the people behind her. It's not the same as Daniel Bryan, who was able to swell the people behind him, but is also an amazing in-ring competitor. He's both. This is not the same thing. However, she does have that, and I still have hope that they're going to do something with her. So, yes, that's where I'm at.
I agree. I'm in agreement with you. The WWE Championship will also be on the line. Big E is going to be defending against Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, and Bobby Lashley. Fatal 4-way rules. Matt, I'm not going to lie, straight off the bat, this is the match I'm most looking forward to. I like every one of these guys tremendously. I think they're all fantastic wrestlers. This is the match. This is the one match on the entire card where I am positively that cannot suck, will not suck, and will likely tear the house down.
I'm with you on that. I will say, I was happy when they added Bobby Lashley to the mix, because for whatever reason, as convoluted as this entire story has been, because they did the whole fatal 4-way to determine a number one contender, and then Kevin Owens got added, and then Bobby Lashley. So it's like, why do we even do the fatal 4-way in the first place if this is just the route you're going to go? The progression of this story has kept me entertained.
Sure.
I am actually very, very excited that they're doing this with Big E, because Big E, I love. I was so excited to see him win the championship, but he needs matches like this. He needs these sort of things to build him as a champion, as a reputable champion, as someone on the level of a Roman Reigns or a Brock Lesnar, that top Drew McIntyre, so that if and when he does face off with those guys, he is believable against them, because we know that he's coming from the mid-card, won the Money in the Bank, and beat Bobby Lashley the way he beat them. So beating guys like Seth Rollins, beating guys like Kevin Owens, beating guys like Bobby Lashley straight up would be great for him. Would definitely solidify him in that main event tier. So I am in 100% agreement. I am super excited for this match, and I'm going to be honest with you. I really, really want Big E to win, but I have no clue who's going to walk out as champion.
My spidey senses are tingling on this one here in regards to Big E's continued reign, because WWE likes to do these multi-man matches and not let their champion get pinned to protect them, you know? And I cannot but feel like maybe this is a way out for them to take the belt off of Big E and give it to Seth, you know, without harming the prestige that Big E was able to build for himself up until this point, despite the fact that I am in complete agreement with you. If Big E comes out of this match defeating Seth Rollins, multiple-time world champion, Bobby Lashley, you know, in freak of nature, beast, recent champion, excellently booked, the one guy in WWE who has been wonderfully booked since 2020, by the way. I think his booking has been spot on. So he's believable as a threat, so on and so forth. And Kevin Owens, because Kevin Owens he's a staple of WWE at this point. He's insane and, you know, universal champion in his own right, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
If he defeats all those three guys, of course you're like, okay, it helps bring him up. But is this it?
So that's the crazy thing about this match, Warren, is there is nobody walking out of this match as champion where I'm gonna be like, oh, that was a shitty, like, that sucks. Like,
good point.
And it's crazy because normally in these kind of matches, like, you want the one guy that you're really rooting for, that you want to see win, you know? Rarely do you get a match where it's like, there are four competitors in here, and I don't really care who wins. I'm going to be happy regardless.
Sure.
Because all four guys are so amazing and deserve it. We watched Seth do all that stuff he did on SmackDown before coming to Raw, where he was kind of, you know, with Edge and just outside of that main event scene. And so now seeing him win the WWE title, like, I really wouldn't be mad. He's been as awful as his suits and everything are, like he's been really fun. Kevin Owens is that guy that heel or face, you kind of love him. You're always going to want to, like, he's a dick, but you kind of love him.
I'm a huge Kevin Owens fan, so you don't have to sell me on him. That's fine.
Bobby Lashley, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of some of the Hurt Business nonsense and the fact that they broke it up and then reformed it and then pretend like they didn't reform it and
just some tiny things.
Booked amazingly. Would not be mad to see Bobby Lashley get a second WWE title run. And then obviously Big E walking out still champion, overcoming these four men. I'm completely torn. Like,
yeah,
how do you pick?
It's a very good point you bring up. It's like I think that any four of these guys is legitimate. All of them are legitimate. You can absolutely see them winning, and you know, outside of having a very personal preference. Look, I'm gonna tell you what, because it's very hard to pick, but I'll tell you, I would have a personal preference for Big E to retain, because I think it would be very good. I could also definitely see Big E losing, and then heading down a chase for the title, which Big E hasn't done, right? He hasn't chased the title. And I think that could be a lot of fun, because, you know, we're already speculating about the Royal Rumble this year, so on and so forth. I could see a titleless Big E win the Royal Rumble and head into WrestleMania, like have that chase, you know? I could definitely see that as well. That could be fun on another level.
Okay, so you've sold me. So long-term prediction. Big long-term prediction. Bobby Lashley walks out champion.
Okay.
Big E wins the Rumble. Lashley, Big E at WrestleMania in a straight-up singles match.
It makes sense to me. It makes sense. Just like it could make sense that they give Kevin Owens the belt because, hey, thank you for re-signing Kevin.
Yeah, true.
You know, it's like there's so many outcomes here, and I have trouble finding, like you, an issue with either of them. But I think my preference would be Big E retaining. That would be my, like, you know, but I couldn't be mad either way. Either guy who wins here, either of the four.
I don't know. I'm kind of sold on Big E getting that singles run, fighting back for the title now. So I actually think I kind of want to see Big E lose this one. Okay. So I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna pick Lashley to win, get the title back, and then we're gonna see Big E make a run for WrestleMania as a singles guy to get that belt back from Lashley.
That's all depending on whether or not WWE just wants to stick to very simple, basic, and compelling booking. But then that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
The big main event, I think it's safe to say this is the main event, right? Universal Champion Roman Reigns defending against Brock Lesnar, Saskatchewan native Brock Lesnar. I don't know. Look, it just as an aside, like a lot of people around me recently have found out that Brock Lesnar lives in Canada. Like he's been living there for years at this point. He up in the fucking northern part of Saskatchewan, which is, I don't know how familiar you are with Canadian geography, but it's like dead smack in the country, and it's flatland. It's like the breadbasket of the country, right? That's where you have it's farms and stuff. And you don't have to go very far north in Canada for shit to get really, really cold. So he lives on a ranch, like in some of the, like, I wouldn't say inhospitable, but in one of the, in an area where there are really no urban centers around him. It's like these small towns, and he's just like out in the boonies and he's enjoying himself. And a lot of people got really excited about that. They're like, oh, he's Canadian like us. Like, I guess, but no, because Brock Lesnar is not like any of us, really.
Well, he's from Minnesota, right?
He's from Minnesota.
And as an American, we basically consider Minnesota part of Canada. Like that is the most Canadian part of America that there is. So
yeah.
To be fair.
You go. Fair enough. I mean, look, do we just jump right in? Well, okay, first of all, how do you like Brock recently? How do you babyface Brock Lesnar?
So here's the thing. I have had, again, and innate bias and hate for Brock Lesnar since he beat the Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania 30 because I am a huge Undertaker fan. I have been my entire life. I literally cried. A grown man cried when the Undertaker streak was broken.
Sure.
My wife can attest to that because for some reason she still decided to marry me after witnessing that. So that's
a hell of a bond. That's a hell of a bond.
She sees that. I was very, very upset to see that happen. So I have hated Brock Lesnar for a very long time. But as we've affectionately come to call him, Ponytail Brock, is absolutely fantastic and entertaining as all hell. Him sitting down with Sami Zayn and being chummy and manipulating him and doing all that stuff. Some of the best work I've seen Brock do in a very, very long time without Paul Heyman at his side. Him not caring, like you said, like I envision Brock like Wolverine in the X-Men movies where he's just like out in a forest somewhere chopping down trees in his flannel in the middle of nowhere, snow everywhere, like
punching rocks, shows up, punching boulders.
Yeah, exactly. He hops on a jet, flies to Raw, and, you know, after doing lumberjack shit, shows up, F5 some people. He's probably F5ing trees out in the middle of the forest for practice. Like that's what I envision. I've actually really enjoyed Brock, and this is the first time that I've been able to admit that since WrestleMania 30. So that was hard for me. But
you came around, like, you know, you everyone grieves differently, Matt. You know, and I can respect that.
Also, what they've done with Paul Heyman, for me, has probably been the most compelling storytelling that WWE has done in a very long time, especially across all three brands. I know you're not a huge NXT 2.0 fan. We've talked about that. I, however, enjoy it, and so it's normally my favorite show of the week. But when it comes to Brock, Roman, and Paul Heyman, and the slow burn of where does Paul's alliance really lie, and the little slip-ups, the Freudian slips of Brock, especially with Sami Zayn, where he's like, what is this? Who are you? This is not the beast incarnate, the dominant Brock Lesnar. Like, this isn't you. Like, those things I've enjoyed so much. And then when Roman finally said, I don't trust you, and just punched him in the mouth, like, and then Paul doing the interview with Kayla, like, this has been my favorite storytelling that I've seen in a very long time from WWE, and they've done a fantastic job. And again, they've taken an utter just deep hatred for a man and turned it into a blossoming enjoyment of him being on my TV and showing up. So
that's I guess absolutely a victory if they were able to convert you like that. Is it time for Roman to drop the strap? Is it time?
I don't know if it's time, but if it's not going to be to Brock, who like Drew, I guess maybe down the line. But again, and this is something we've talked about with WWE, they haven't really built anyone up to face Roman, to be a believer. You had Big E, but you sent Big E to Raw, and he did the thing with Bobby Lashley. So, like, yeah, that was who they had on SmackDown they were building up. You had Seth, but again, they sent him to Raw. So there's no one, like, you lost Daniel Bryan. We know, I'd say Cesaro is the, you know, same thing as a Liv Morgan or a Apollo Crews, and you get behind him, you think they're finally doing something with him. And again, also in ring, fucking fantastic.
Oh, yeah, he's amazing.
But they just pull the rug out from under him every time he's getting somewhere. There's really no one else. So at least with Brock as champion, you can start build. I mean, there's history with Drew. There's stuff there where you can see, okay, this may be the route they're going. With Roman, once he beats Brock, he says it every week, he smashed everyone. And nobody wants missionary position every night. And Roman beating Brock is just missionary position all over again.
Do we know the details on Brock's contract?
I don't
either. And I think that's a big deal. And I think that's probably the biggest indicator as to whether or not they're going to keep him, they're going to put the belt on him or not. Is here's my ridiculous way of thinking. If Brock is, you know, part-timing or just on a very select deal, you know, they probably won't put the title on him, right? Bill Goldberg this week, my favorite professional wrestler of all time, was on the Pat McAfee show, and he said, I have one more match on my WWE contract. He's got one more. I think it's Roman. I think his one, and Roman kicks the shit out of Goldberg. Because the only thing that really makes sense, if Brock isn't on a good old-fashioned WWE contract, which he probably isn't, but you know what I mean, is to put it on Drew. And for Drew, because Brock doesn't need the rub from beating Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. He doesn't, he doesn't need it. Drew would be the biggest notch on his sword, literally. If he were to do that, that would be a huge thing for Drew McIntyre.
We refer to, and I kind of feel bad about this because he named it after his mother, but we refer to Drew's sword as his giant metaphorical dick over on our podcast.
Despite the fact that he calls it his mother, you guys are weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We are. And I agree with that 100%. I don't know. Does Roman need the rub from beating Brock again though? Like, does that really do anything for Roman if he beats Brock again? Like, unfortunately,
other than establish the fact that whoever beats Roman Reigns is like a demigod at this point. That's why I think it would work for Drew to be the guy to do it. Because then Drew's like, Jesus Christ, it's Drew,
But Drew beat Brock, so Drew's just beating another guy that beat the guy he already beat. Like, it's not like Drew couldn't beat Brock, Roman beat Brock, and now Drew beat the guy that beat the guy he couldn't beat. Like, they'd both be on the same level. They've both beaten Brock Lesnar, and then Drew just got the one up on Roman finally. So I really don't feel like Roman's getting, and that's the sad part, is the storytelling is just so great, but neither guy really comes out with anything if they win. Like, we've seen Brock Lesnar as Universal Champion. The only thing we haven't seen solo babyface Brock Lesnar as champion. So there's that. But
that's true.
Roman doesn't gain anything because we've seen him beat Brock Lesnar. We've seen him beat everybody. Brock doesn't get anything because he's Brock, and
Brock Lesnar doesn't need. He doesn't need titles. Brock could just be beating up guys on the upper mid card. Kind of like Edge. Edge doesn't need a title either. People are excited to see Edge. Brock doesn't need titles to get excited for him. Just put him in feuds. Have him beat up people. That's what you want to see. All right. Well, okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I think I know where you're going. I think you were going to ask me who was going to win the match. I think I said a different predictions that I did for our prediction pool, but I'm going to go with Roman retaining. So I think I put Brock down in our prediction pool, but I'm going to go Roman retaining. And then if I'm wrong, 50-50. I can say right on Warren's show, or I got it in the predictions pool. So I'm going to go with Roman retaining.
I think it's there's a lot of people who are having Brock in as a shoo-in, but I don't think it's that clear cut. I really don't. I'm having extreme levels of difficulty to like pick with certitude, But look, you know what? If the predictions, if the storyline develops or wraps up basically like you were saying, and that, as Paul said, because Paul, I think this is the key word here when Paul before he got punched in the mouth, he said, telling Roman that I'm protecting you from Brock Lesnar. I think that's prophetic as far as a line goes. And they've brought that one back, in the recap videos. They're sort of underscoring that one, I think that could lead us to believe that Brock Lesnar is going to win. But I can absolutely see Roman hanging on to him and everyone having a fucking meltdown and saying, I'm canceling my USA Network subscription. No, they won't do that. But you know.
Well, see, now you're leaning me back the other way, because that was also a great point. You know, maybe I am going to go with Brock winning, like my original pick was, because Paul Heyman is a huge factor in this. We don't know what, if any, role Paul is going to play.
I don't think there's going to be, maybe outside of the Usos, right? But I don't think there's going to be all that much interference, because I don't think it really plays well into the match per se. Then again, maybe the Usos, I don't know.
I don't see an actual interference, but I could see Paul Heyman coming down and just kind of standing ringside to watch what's going on, and maybe that leading to Roman being distracted and upset with Paul's appearance. Why are you out here? I kicked you out. Who are you out here for? Blah, blah, blah. That might allow Brock to get a little bit of an advantage. Unless this is an elaborate plan by Paul Heyman to then screw Brock Lesnar over.
And try and get back into the good graces of Roman Reigns.
Because I mean, Paul Heyman being the wrestling mastermind that we know he is, I'll come out, you punch me in the mouth, we make Brock think that I'm done with you.
Sure.
And then during the match, I'll convince Brock that I'm there for him. And at the last minute, I'm still the special counsel, the wise man for the tribal chief.
Sure. I mean, anything but the word manager, right? So the, yeah, I could see that it works. It makes sense in some weird convoluted way, because Heyman is going to be the key here. Heyman is the key. I also think that the bloodline is falling apart. Like, I think, the Usos lose, Roman loses. I think that's also a fun story to tell, and look, they're calling this day one, right?
Fresh start.
Like, fresh start, right? The new year. Yeah, and this is Nick Khan's baby at the same time. It's his project, So, maybe, there's nothing like a nice fresh slate to start off the new year, new year, new SmackDown,
Which also brings me back to why it might not be a bad idea to put the belt on Liv if you're going to go with fresh starts, fresh faces,
sure,
new year.
But then,
yeah, fuck it, I'm going to go Brock. Brock wins. I think you kind of sold me on that. While I absolutely could see Paul Heyman cutting that promo of how he fooled Brock, he fooled everyone.
Sure.
He thought this, he went the other way. I'm still gonna. That was my gut. That's what I originally put down. So that's what I'm gonna go. Is Brock walks out, Universal Champion. I did say earlier in the show I thought this was going to be the beginning of the decline of the bloodline. So the Usos lose, Roman loses. You've got that tension. It's a good story. It's a good place to go after this, and it allows to have that Goldberg Roman Reigns singles match that you were talking about.
Whoop-de-doo. And it puts Roman Reigns in the Royal Rumble, which is not uninteresting in and about itself either.
Let's throw Bobby Lashley and Edge in there, and let's just make it a who has the best spear match.
There you go. Bobby Lashley. I think it's reasonable to pick Brock, but I can definitely see Roman retaining and everyone having a meltdown. So whatever happens.
You mentioned that anything but a manager. They call Paul the advocate, the special counsel, so on and so forth. Have you seen my pitch for what Paul should do after this?
No, tell me.
I want them to pair him with Tony D'Angelo as his consigliere.
I love it. Yeah, I'm completely sold on that. 100. That's so good.
Give him another title. Same thing, different title. Let Paul Heyman be the consigliere to Tony D.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. Well, there you go. Those are predictions for day one. Overall, like if you were to just feel it out, do you think this is going to be a great card, a good card, average, toilet juice? What do you think it's going to be?
To go with the theme of my podcast, I'm going to swallow this card.
Okay.
There are quite a few. Like I said, I really love the storytelling for the Universal title match. I'm very excited about the WWE Championship match.
Mm-hmm.
There are only two matches that I'm really on. Like I know the Usos and the New Day is going to be a good match. It's going to be a fun, entertaining match that I have seen 1,000 times, and I'm going to enjoy it again. The RK Bro match, unless what I want to happen with Randy Orton at the end. And again, if you want to know about that, go listen to our latest episode, and you will hear about it in all the explicit detail. Not too excited for that, unfortunately. And then Madcap Monster McIntyre, I could give two shits about. But the majority of the card I enjoy. So to start off with, I'm going to swallow this card.
There you go.
See where we end up afterwards.
I'm with you. I will just on the strength of the Fatal 4-Way, the intrigue of the main event. I think it is a swallowable card. Absolutely. I agree. Well, Matt, this was a lot of fun. I really had a good time chatting wrestling with you today. Before we go, though, let everyone know where to find your stuff out there on the internet.
All right. First, I want to say thank you again for having me on. I like that I was able to come on here and show people that I actually kind of know what I'm talking about. And it's not all just dick and fart jokes. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, those are very exclusive. That's a whole other level. Yeah, exactly.
But you guys can find me on Twitter at Matt Ridder. There's at MATTRIDDER. We also have a Twitter and an Instagram that is Smackin It Raw Pod, so you guys can go there. The link trees are in my bio at Smackin It Raw Pod and at Matt Ridder. Also, Facebook.com/Creation World, CreationWorld.com. I believe you put the link in for this. Creation World is the banner under which the Smackin It Raw Pod exists. So if you go there, you can get everything from Creation World, Dungeons After Dark, Super Flash Hero of Tomorrow, our podcast, everything. So please go check that out as well. And yeah, I think that's about it.
No, that's a whole bunch of great stuff there. But do follow Matt and join it. His podcast is a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun. A lot of us take this shit too seriously. Not Matt and the crew. They really they remind us, like, you know what's fun? Your podcast often reminds me of just, wrestling is just fun. It's like it's supposed to be fun, and that's always the atmosphere that you have on your show. I'm telling you, it's a great listen. Go check it out, absolutely. And thank you again for joining me, Matt. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And thank you everyone for watching as well. If you enjoyed it so far, hey, you can subscribe if you want to, and also leave reviews and 5-star reviews and all that stuff. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Hope you're going to enjoy day one. There you go. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.